Hello, I'm Stephen Robbins, and I am here today with Ray Reed, who is the Democratic candidate for the for Missouri 2. Um, the first Gen Z that I am aware of who is, sorry, I'm getting feedback. Um,
Hi, Adam. It's Justice Warren, and I'm actually texting you
Sorry,
as
I'm
well.
getting severe feedback. I'm hearing myself.
I'm
I
good.
don't know if that's coming from
I
you.
am calling
Um,
people ahead of
in any event,
I just want to make
um,
sure
okay, I think we're good. No.
Okay.
what the organization is, so people hears us.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to keep going and I will talk over myself. So, um, you are the first Gen Z candidate that I'm aware of who's running for national office. And I would love to hear a little bit about your origin story.
So yeah,
What is it
I'm
that
actually
brought
gonna
you to this
get
point?
you some
Why are
notes
you
that
running? What do you hope
very
to achieve?
rapidly right now. So sorry, I'm gonna get the
Yeah.
notes.
So
Yeah.
I'm Ray Reed. I'm the 25-year-old Democratic candidate for Missouri's second congressional district. Born and raised right here in Motu. I'm actually not in Motu right now. I'm outside the district helping another Gen Z candidate get elected. But yeah, so I grew up in Missouri. Grew up in suburbs of St. Louis. Got my start in Missouri politics after my freshman year of college, working in Governor Nixon's office on bill reviews and clemency applications. Governor Nixon was the last Democratic governor of the state of Missouri. Uh, so yeah, working on bill reviews, clemency applications. We got actually a little more than 70 folks pardoned for nonviolent drug-related offenses, which is really progressive looking at Missouri. Um, stayed with Nixon through the end of his administration. Then went back to college, working with the It's On Us campaign, fighting sexual assaults on college campuses. And then after college, got a job at our state Democratic Party, organizing for House and Senate candidates and on McCaskill's 18 campaign. So kind of worked across all 114 counties in Missouri, meeting people where they are, hearing their stories, and turning that and taking their stories with me. We sat, me and my friends sat at a bonfire in the suburbs of St. Louis, of Kirkwood, after the 2020 election, and we talked about the issues that we care about. We care about universal health care, we care about student loan forgiveness, we care about union rights. And what stood between me and working on those issues was this federal office. So here we are running for Congress.
Wow, that must have been very, I mean, I would say it must have been, it would have been for me very scary. Like, that's a pretty big thing to be doing at the age of 25.
It's a lot. It's a lot, but our community has been what's gotten us this far, as well as young people, union folks. I think for the first time in a long time, people are excited about a Democratic politician, a young Democratic politician here in Missouri. So I'm excited. It's a lot, but it's definitely worth all the work that we're doing.
Cool. Now, Gandhi said you should be the change you hope to see in the world. So
Mhm.
I'm going to ask, what is the change you hope to see in the world?
I think the change I want to see in the world is my generation. I think we are the most compassionate, inclusive, and driven generation in a long time. So I think my generation, the generation I belong to, we are the changes that we seek. Um, I really believe that when we all participate, not even the sky is our limit. And I am really, really excited about, my generation stepping up in leadership roles from the state house all the way up to Congress.
Gotcha. Now, I know one of the things, because I watched with great interest is AOC and Katie Porter and sort of the freshman, I forget what they call them, but the freshman class a few years ago of Congress. And one of the things that I thought was most impressive about them was their willingness. I don't even want to say to speak truth to power, right? Because technically they are now power, but their willingness to stand up and really break some of the established norms in terms of being able to say the things that people were thinking but weren't necessarily willing to say out loud, being able to say, hey, some of the ways that things operate just aren't fair and shouldn't be operating this way. What are you going to be able to bring to the table? Are there in terms of that? Like, are you planning on going in and essentially taking that point of view? Are you planning on working within the system? Um, how do you approach the idea of making change once you're elected?
Yeah, so I think the theme of my generation is that we don't wait around for someone else to fix the problems. We go in there and we fix it ourselves. So, even in this campaign, a few weeks ago, I was in Washington meeting with members of the House and Senate, like members like Senator Lisa Murkowski, even Senator Mitch McConnell, Senator Chris Murphy, Senator Joni Ernst, um, doing the job that my congressman should have already been doing, building consensus around common sense gun control. And we ended up getting the bipartisan framework, which turned into the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which is now the Bipartisan Safer Communities Law. And just to be clear, that law, it's not enough, but it's something. It's the first thing we've had in decades to address gun violence on the federal level. Um, but I'm going to Congress to fight for a ban on assault rifles, just because I don't believe that military style weapons belong on the streets of America. Um, so, it's about, using those relationships that we've already started to create in Washington. Our team is still in communication uh, with members in Congress, uh, just carrying that over to when we're actually in Congress.
Nice. Okay, so you're basically already starting to do the things you want to do once you're elected.
Yeah.
What? So I mean, this is potentially a controversial question here, but I've noticed that you have a particular race, and you have earrings. You are not presenting as what I will call the traditional image of a congressman or a legislature, which tends to be, an old white guy or woman who, is wearing a suit, red tie, red or blue tie for the men, white shirt, etc., etc. Tell me about that, because it's clear that you're
Yeah.
not just saying, okay, my path to success is going to be to imitate what has gone before. You're showing up very differently from how I'm used to seeing candidates show
Yeah.
up.
And I think that comes across really well with voters. We are clearly authentic. I don't have to pretend to be something I'm not. That night of that bonfire in Kirkwood, we said, let's make Democrats cool again, because Democrats, really politics in general, just isn't cool. Uh, but our theme in this campaign is let's make Democrats cool again. Let's just be ourselves. Young people always know it's cool. And I think that is resonated with folks here in the district, even folks who in the past have supported traditional politicians. They're ready for something fresh, ready to be excited again.
Sure. Well, I know that one of the ways that people get excited, right, is fighting for causes or whatever, right? Like they say, really, if you want to engage people, you need to give them a purpose bigger than themselves that they can
Yeah.
that they can really buy into. How are you framing that for people, and how are you finding people responding?
Yeah, it's kind of that message that, we are our brother's keeper. That's kind of the message, I think, the Democratic Party. Um, all of our policies are geared towards making everyday people make sure that everyday people have a little bit of breathing room. Um, I think that resonates really well, especially in the rural parts of, the newly rural parts of my district. A lot of politicians in the past have written off those super red areas, but I don't think that those people are necessarily hard to reach. I think they just often feel hardly reached, and it's our job to go into those areas and make people feel heard and understand that we're fighting for them and that I will fight for them in Congress.
Wait, you're actually going and talking to constituents who aren't members of your party.
I am. I am. It's wild, but it actually works.
Well, just today I was reading a New York Times article. It was an opinion piece that was talking about somebody who, this wasn't a politician. This was just, just a pundit who had been very critical of Trump and of Trump voters, and had characterized them as being, stupid or out of touch or whatever. And then he actually went and started talking to them, and understood the issues that they were grappling with, and their resentment about certain things, which, by the way, their resentment was very well founded. Like, it made sense. There was stuff that had happened that was really bad for them. Can you talk a little bit about what you have found to be the actual issues and the things people really care about versus the media stereotypes? And I'm really referring to
Yeah,
either side of the aisle at this point.
yeah. I think our campaign does a really great job of cutting through the noise, a lot of that political noise, and people. They're not some. I don't even think people are so much concerned with big government or small government. They're more concerned with better government. They're more concerned with getting their kids through school, making sure there's food on the table, making sure there's a roof over their head. Bottom line, that's what everyone wants. Um, so we cut through that noise and just make it clear that, hey, we're fighting for you in Congress.
Sure. To what degree, I mean, when you say we're fighting for you, right? There's a couple of pieces to that, right? One is, what is the end goal? And I get the sense that a lot of us agree on the end goal. We want to be warm, dry, and full and safe. Um, and some of our disagreements are the how, right? Because there are some people who say, well, the way that we get safe is by providing social services so that people don't become criminals and have upwardly mobile jobs. Other people say the way we stay safe is through expanded policing or is through gun ownership, or whatever. There's a variety of different disagreements as to the means. But then, as a lawmaker, I would submit, and please feel free to push back on this, but I would submit there's a tension between just doing the solution that your constituents want versus actually using data and science and statistics and trying to understand what will give them the outcome, even if it doesn't get there the way that they're expecting it to happen. What do you like? How do you think about that, and about how you decide which policies and how to pursue them?
Um, you're the first person that's asked me that. Uh, you know, our policies were crafted um, after. So I pretty much went down every single issue: economy, veterans, education, environment, reproductive care, healthcare. Reproductive care is healthcare, by the way. But we just talked about how can we make sure that the people who get up every single morning, putting one foot in front of the other, just figuring out a way to make it all work. How do we make sure that they have a little bit of breathing room? That's the number one goal. Um, and when I go into the bluest of blue areas in my district and the reddest of red areas in my district, my message always stays the same. And that's how we keep our authenticity. You know, um, I'm going to Congress to make sure that you have that little bit of breathing room. And I break down issue by issue how, our current congresswoman is pretty much the congresswoman of Wall Street. She doesn't really care about working people, or she might say she does, but her actions in Congress don't match her words here in the district. So our job is to effectively communicate. President Obama said Democrats have a story to tell. We just got to tell it. And part of telling that story is also telling the story of the Republican Party. You know, I don't know who your Republican congressman or who the Republicans are in your state or in your district, but I guarantee I can come up. I know what their messaging is on their websites and what they say in public. They're going to say, I'm stopping Joe Biden from doing X, Y, and Z. They don't actually have a plan to do anything.
Right.
But, you know, Democrats have a clear plan, a clear path forward on how to build on the progress we've made these last 2 years under President Joe Biden. And we have to make sure that people understand that the Republican agenda, their theme of the Republican Party, their point of the Republican Party and their candidacies is to stand in opposition to all the progress that we want to make in America. That's our job in these midterms.
Well, right, if you think about it, conservative by definition means you want to conserve the status quo. And, frankly, progress is not conservative by definition. Unfortunately, we seem to be living that despite the fact we have a world that is changing and has changed dramatically over the last decades. Uh, any thoughts? I don't know the degree to which you have had any kind of closed door meetings with other people who are one or two classes ahead of you, so who had to deal with becoming freshmen congressmen and so on, or congresswomen or congresspeople. Do you have any sense for what the challenges are going to be in terms of working within your own party? Because I know.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm actually in a texting group with a group chat with a few members of Congress, and they always have some great advice for me. We understand that because of my age, if I get to Congress in January, there'll be a lot of attention. We'll definitely have a microphone. And I intend to not only use that microphone to fight for progressive issues, but to bring up an entirely new generation of leaders across the country with me. Um, but we do have a sense of how Congress works, and it's dysfunctional for a reason. That's because there's not a lot of people in there shedding light on how things really work, and we definitely intend to do that.
Uh-oh. Wait, so Madison Cawthorn, of course, just mentioned the coke-fueled orgies, and he got resoundingly trounced. You mean you're going to actually talk about
I don't know anything about that. That definitely doesn't happen in my party. I can't speak for the other party though. But yeah, we're definitely going to give some voice and clear things up for a lot of people. Again, cutting through that political noise.
Well, so I was a supporter, a big Obama supporter, and I really wanted to go to one of his fundraising dinners, but certainly when he came to my city, the fundraising dinners were thousands of dollars a plate, and I looked at this and said, I can't afford that in given my circumstances at the time, or whatever. I would like to have gone, but there's really a limit. And one of the things I think that this type of event and this way of meeting with constituents does is it results in candidates only hearing from the people who can afford the $2,500 a plate dinner or the $5,000 a plate dinner. How do you communicate? I mean, right now you're in Missouri. You're actually going out and physically talking to people. I don't know how much time you have to do that once you're in Congress, because at some point you have to actually be legislating and reading and writing bills and so on and so forth. How do you intend to stay in touch with people other than just the big donors?
Oh yeah. So my family, so I'm in a family of mostly women, and they definitely don't let me get a big head. They they keep me grounded for sure. So I'll always have a grasp on reality. And it's really because I wasn't necessarily, not necessarily, I wasn't born into wealth. I understand the plight of everyday working class people because I myself am a product of everyday working class people. Uh, on an issue like student loans, I still have student loans. My friends have student loans. My family members have student loans. A lot of people here in my district have student loans. So on an issue like that, we're right in touch with the community as opposed to my opponent who's a millionaire 10 times over, who just doesn't understand the plight of working class everyday people.
Yeah, well, I think that's fairly common. I guess I remember reading a statistic once that said if you look at the financial composition of the Senate and of Congress, it's far from representative of the socioeconomic breakdown of the way the country works. Um,
Yeah.
I think I was probably part of the last generation who managed to have student debt that could actually be discharged early enough that I could have a life. And I have a friend who actually he's 25, and we were sitting down and going over his finances because I was helping him do some thinking about salary negotiations for a job he was getting, and I was appalled. Like when I actually sat down and ran the numbers, this gentleman is not going to be able to afford a house and a family until he's in his 40s. At which point, good luck saving for retirement. Um,
Yeah.
Now, what do you do when you're talking to Nancy Pelosi about this, or whatever? Or I don't actually want to pick on Nancy Pelosi. I don't know what her position is on student loan forgiveness, but she's one of the wealthier members of the administrator or of the legislature. How do you relate to people like that in a way where they can hear you and in a way where they actually take you seriously versus just going, he's a freshman, he doesn't know what he's talking about, you know. Um, and I'm referring to either party because it seems to me like that's something
Yeah.
that's potentially endemic.
Yeah. I think with the day I'm sworn into Congress, a lot more people have a voice who didn't necessarily have one before, who just didn't have one before, particularly young people. Um, and that voice will ring all across the country. Um, and no matter what district you're in, you're gonna hear about young people and the rise of young people. Just because a young person is now, or a member of Gen Z will now be in Congress. Um, so they're gonna feel the heat in their district. And when the federal budget comes up, I'll introduce an amendment to forgive every single federal student loan. And real quick, for the cost of that tax cut in 2017 that my opponent Ann Wagner voted for, if you guys don't remember anything else, for the cost of that tax cut, we could have forgiven every single federal student loan in America, every single one. So people always ask, how are you going to pay for it? We already are paying for it. Republican members like my opponent Ann Wagner, they prioritize Wall Street over the plight of working people. Um, so it's not really a question about possibility, it's a question about priority. What are we prioritizing? And Wagner's prioritizing Wall Street, I'm prioritizing everyday folks.
But that's one of the things that I am too young to really have been aware of the shift in the mindset of like the Democratic Party. My impression is that once upon a time, the Democratic Party really did fight for the underdog and really took the plight of working class people as one of their foremost causes. Do you have any sense of what changed? Like, how did we get to where we are today, where it seems like both parties primarily represent the wealthy? They may differ on social issues, but their decision making, in fact, there was even the study that came out about that. I remember reading about that basically said at some point we stopped being represented. Do you have any idea when or how that happened?
Yeah, I think Democrats, again, it's just about messaging. Sometimes, too many times, we let Republicans spin our narrative for us. Um, when they go and they they'll find a way to, like, say we had Build Back Better, they found a way to spin Build Back Broke and just trash our policy in the swing areas where we need votes. So it's about messaging. Democrats, we are on the right side of just about every single issue. I think it's clear that Republicans, they're not just about small government anymore. They're about bringing government to its knees. This, I'll quote President Biden: "This ain't your dad's Republican Party anymore." Those guys went so far to the right that it's unrecognizable to the party that they were 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, one of the kinds of arguments that I'm very tired of hearing is when people say, "Oh, look at this government department that does things so poorly," and I'm like, "Yes, that's because its budget has been cut 10 times in the last year, so of course it does things poorly." And then they say, "Oh, the private sector does things well." I'm like, "Sometimes. Some private sector companies do things very well. Other private sector companies waste a tremendous amount of time and resources and money and then go bankrupt because they do things very poorly." But you don't hear about those because, right, the Republicans have really succeeded in this narrative that says government bad, private sector good. My personal position is you have good and bad in both the public and the private sector. The question is, how do you get kind of the best practices of getting stuff done into both sectors so that we can do everything efficiently? Um, have you do you have you ever traveled internationally? Do you have much contact with people from different economic systems? Uh, I certainly, in terms of scaring people, the word socialism, right, is like the big evil word. Um, what is your sense about things like that, about
Yeah,
economic systems,
on,
capitalism, etc.?
yeah. When we say socialism, we think about Denmark, not Venezuela. There's a difference on our type of socialism. But, there's socialism. At its pure definition is all around us. From Social Security to your police department, we sacrifice goods to the government in return for products that help us in our everyday lives. So I think it all comes back to messaging and breaking through that noise and making it clear to folks what we stand for.
So how are you going to do that? Because one of the things I actually talked with the man who was the Republican, like who wrote the Republican playbook on messaging back in the early 2000s, a man named Frank Luntz. He's a pollster. He was the one who changed the frequency of the phrase global warming to the phrase climate change, because he did all these focus groups that showed that people didn't find they didn't find the notion of climate change to be something that introduced urgency, whereas the phrase global warming did. But the thing that the Republicans had that the Democrats don't have is they essentially had a news network, which is Fox News, that was willing to take this playbook and have every single talking head, every single newscaster just lockstep start to adopt their language and their messages. How do you do that in a party whose defining characteristic is diversity and to be an umbrella for many different groups?
Um, so I think in more ways than one, our party represents America. Like you said, diversity. America's a melting pot. You see the stunning lack of diversity in the other party. Um, when you say how do we do it, um, a lot of it is meeting folks where they're at. So going into the areas, whether
No, no,
it's
no, no. Sorry. What I mean is how do we unify the messaging? Because presumably,
oh,
like,
okay,
it becomes most
gotcha.
powerful if you and all of the representatives have similar talking points or at least similar frames that you use to communicate to people.
Yeah. Gotta choose my words carefully here.
It's all about messaging.
Yeah. Um, so is it as far as working within our own party, with getting on message? Um, I think it shows where when we win elections. It starts when we win elections. Um, you saw AOC win. You saw how well Bernie did in 2016. You saw Cory Bush win Ayanna Presley, Ilhan Omar. Um, when more and more progressives win, we shift the party towards the left. Uh, and when we shift the party towards the left, even the old guard in the party, um, they even shift their own policy towards the left. Joe Biden now is not the same Joe Biden from the 1990s. He's kind of shifted towards the left even. Um, so it's about getting more and more progressives elected, because at the end of the day, a lot of these folks, they just want to win elections. Um, so progressives know what fires people up, what fires more and more people up. So it's our job to not just be the moral compass, but to lead the party north.
Yeah, and to make sure that everyone knows that's what the compass is and where
Yeah,
you're headed. I mean, honestly, warm, dry, and full, and having, I mean, you call it a buffer. I would just call it a safety net. Having a rainy day fund, not just monetarily, but in terms of housing, security. I do this thing that I started doing like 10 years ago. I don't even remember why, but I was at a conference where there were people from like 20 different countries at this conference. There was only 100 people. So, I met people from all of these different countries, and I asked everyone just for fun the same question. I said, "What keeps you up at night?" So, people in your country, what do they worry about? And the woman from France said, tax rates. People pay way too much money in taxes. And one of the people from, I think it was Germany, said, I worry that there's not enough meaning in my life and that I'm not fulfilling my purpose. And the Americans all said, we're afraid of getting sick, bankrupting us, and dying in a gutter somewhere of starvation because we can't afford to be able to recover from the medical debt. And I've always found that to be striking because the messaging required to get those people to perk up and listen is basically, we will create a society in which we all take care of each other. And I just haven't heard that messaging coming out, except, from for you at the moment, you're not framing it quite that same way, but you're saying we're going to give you a buffer. So
gotcha.
Um, is there anything that you would like to add? Because we're pretty much close to time here. We have about 2 minutes left. Is there anything that you would like to add that you just want people to know? I did put your URL down on the screen so people can get a hold of you that way. And as the representative of Gen Z, I assume you're going to be creating a WhatsApp group that includes all of Gen Z. So you'll be able to.
Yeah. Yeah, and since we got an audience here, I gotta tell everyone there is this another Gen Z candidate. His name is Justice Horn. I'm here in Kansas City right now. Guys, I think this guy is the real deal in Kansas City. Um, Guys, our generation is something really special. I really believe that, again, when we all participate, not even the sky is our limit. And I don't see this race has never been just about me. Um, this election is really just a microphone for my generation. And my only job in life right now is to bring up as many young people as I possibly can. So let me give a shout out to Justice in Kansas City, my friend Nabila. She's running in the suburbs of Chicago, their 51st House seat, and Maxwell Frost in Florida, Florida's 10th Congressional District. Um, Again, my generation is the change that we're seeking. So sign up to help out a Gen Z candidate or even a progressive candidate. Whenever you think you've done enough, guys, knock on one more door, make one more phone call, send in one more dollar. I promise it's going to make all the difference in the end. And thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us.